Welcome to Beaded Doilies by Shell. In this video I will be going over the one needle stitch for my beaded doily patterns. First I want to show you what a row is. As you can see here, I have the hexagon pattern outlined inside of the round, and I have colored in, depending on whether you're working left to right or right to left, the first row for the hexagon pattern. And as you can see, a row consists of your center beads with a row of beads on each side. So this is what a row will consist of. Another thing I want to point out is that each circle of beads will have 6 beads, a top, center, and bottom, and then 2 beads on each side. So as you're doing your beading, you want to just check to make sure that you always have 6 beads for each circle. Alright, now for the one needle stitch with my fishing line, what I do is I put a piece of tape about 6 inches in, and that keeps my beads from falling off as I'm working. I'm sure if you've worked with the one needle stitch or a one needle stitch before, you probably have a nifty way that you use to keep your beads from falling off your string. Okay, so what we're going to begin is for the round doilies, I start in the center, but with the one needle stitch you can actually work it 2 different ways, so I'm going to be showing you both ways here. So for the one needle stitch, what you want to do is you want to start with the second bead, center bead in. So we're going to start here. We're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can also add them the opposite direction, whichever direction works best for you. So I'm going to add my first center bead, which shall be a yellow, and then my second bead on this side will be a pink, and then my 3 bottom beads, which will be like the outline for my piece, will all be green. So 3 greens, and then opposite of the pink I want to use blue. And that's my first 6 beads. Now what I want to do is I want to get that first bead I added and go through it in the same direction. So you want your string coming out on the same side. And there we have our first circle for our doily. Now I have pink as my second bead, so my string is coming out, my working string is coming out on the left side. So my next set I would add in this order. And of course, if you used the other direction, you would also do it in the opposite order. All depends on which direction is more natural for you. So I'm rotating between pink and blue, so I'm going to start with 2 blue for my side beads here. And then I'm going to use a yellow for my center bead. And then for my 2 side beads, I'm going to use 2 pinks. And then we find that top bead of our previous circle. We go through it again so that our string is coming out on the same side it's already coming out on. And there we have our first 2 circles. Now what I want to do is position my string. So I want to go through the 2 side beads that are on the same side as my string. And then I want to go through the top center bead. and I have my pink down here, so I'm coming now out on the right side of my pattern. So for this one, which is the one I'm following, I would add in this order. And if you're going the other direction, you would add in this order. And one way to tell is, like I did here, I make sure that the pink, which was my second bead I added over here, is always on the correct side, and then you can see which side your string is coming out, and that'll let you know which order to add your beads. Now I'm coming out above the pink, so I'm going to add 2 blues, a center yellow, and then 2 pinks. Then again we come down and we connect by going through the top center bead of the previous circle. And then we position our string by going through the 2 side beads on the same side as your string and the top bead of your new circle. Okay, now we are on the left side again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you're working the other way, like I said, it's good to constantly check your piece that you are adding your next set of beads in the correct direction. Again, I will add 2 blues. Now you will continue this process all the way to the very last circle on the row that you are working on. The difference will be when you get to the very last circle, you will want to go through the top bead of your previous row, and then you need to stop there and you need to consider your next row. So we will move on to that. When you come out, or you finish adding the last circle of your first row, the last circle of your first row, then you need to see whether your string, I'll be working from right to left, you want to see if your string is coming out on the opposite side of your next row or the same side as your next row. So here we have the opposite side, whether the next row is longer or shorter. And if you're going the other direction, this is the way it would look. Your string would be coming here, this is longer, your string here, and this is shorter. So if your string is coming out on the opposite side and you want to be on this side, what you do is you go through the 2 side beads and top bead just like you would the others, and that positions you so that you can now look at whether your next row is longer or shorter. So your string will now be coming out of the top, and that's what you do if your string is on the opposite side of your next row. Now when your string is coming out of the top, we'll work with longer first. What you want to do is you want to go through this first side bead. So we'll go down through the first side bead. So there you are, your string is coming out the first side bead. And then you're going to add in this order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you're going the opposite direction, you will add in this order. Oh no, sorry. You want to add the bottom one first. So if your string is coming out the opposite side, you go up and around, and then you go through the first bead if your next row is longer, and then you add your beads. You want a center bead, 2 side beads, and then a top center bead, which we'll use green for that one, and then the side bead for over here, and then you find your way back to that first side bead and you go through it so that your string is coming out the same side as your string is already coming out, and that gives you the first circle of your new row when it is longer than your first row. Now, if your next row is shorter, go back, you're coming out the top of your first row, and your next row is shorter, so you want to go through 1, 2, 3. You want to be coming out this, looking at this circle, you want to be coming out the second side bead for the circle. So you want to go down 1, 2, 3 side beads. So you go through the first 2 side beads, and then you go through 1 side bead on the next circle. And you are now in the 3rd side bead. And then you will add, starting at the bottom again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the same goes here. You will add 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's add, we have our center bead, two side beads, and our top center bead, which I will use a green for. Alright, then you want to come to the second, because remember you're connecting to the second and third, so you want to come to the second one and you want to go into it going towards your third side bead, and then you want to also go through the third side bead. And that is what it looks like when your second row is slightly shorter than your first row. Now, we will come down to here, and if your string is coming out on the same side as the next row you want to do, the main difference will be with the longer row. The shorter row is very similar, so we'll start with the longer row, and what you want to do for it is you want to be coming out this top side bead here that's towards the end of your first row, so you want to go up through just the 2 side beads, and now you're coming out that first top side bead here, and then you're going to add the beads in this direction from top to bottom. And the same if you're going the other direction. So we're going to add a side bead, the first side bead here, then a top center bead, which we'll use green, then 2 side beads for over here, and then our bottom center bead, which we will use yellow. Then you want to find that first bead that you went through, and you want to go through it again, making sure your string is coming out the same side as your string is already coming out. And there you've added. But now you need to position your string, so you're going to go through the two, or all 5 of the beads you just added. You want to go through all 5 of them. And there you are now in the bottom center bead, and that is how it looks if you finish a row and the string is on the same side and your next row is longer. So you'll go up through the 2 side beads, add your beads, and then you'll go through them a second time. Now, if your next row is shorter and your string is on the same side as your next row, get this ready. Okay, your string is coming out and it's on the same side as your next row, and your next row is shorter. You still want to be in that 3rd bead, so 1, 2, 3, that 3rd bead. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through this one side bead below where your string is. And now you're in the 3rd side bead, and you just add this the same as you did above. So now we're going to add, so we're going to add the bottom center bead, 2 side beads, and a top center bead. And then again, we will go through the 2nd bead going towards the 3rd bead, and then also through the 3rd bead. And there we are ready to begin our next row, or continue the row. Alright, now set this aside. Here I'm going to show you adding on your row. The only slight difference is, let's see which one of these has it. I seem to have lost. Is with when your string is on the same side and your row is longer, your string will actually be coming in towards your beads from the center bead. It's the only positioning of string that it will be different, and you do the same thing. You'll go down through the next 2 side beads, and that connects your next circle to your previous row. Now this one, we are adding on rows. I have it for both sides, so whether you're working from right to left or left to right, I'm going to show you how to read your pattern. So you've connected now to your 2 side beads, and what you're going to do is you're going to add the center bead and then your 2 side beads, and the same over here. You'll add the center and then the 2 side. So we'll add a center and 2 side beads, and then you go to the bottom center of your previous circle, and you go through your 2 side beads that connects you to your previous row again. and that adds on your circle. So then you'll want to connect for the next circle. Now you want to notice that when you're connecting, you want the second bead of one circle and the first bead of a second circle on your previous row. So you should be connecting to 2 circles each time. And then you do the same thing. You just add them, the center bead and then your 2 side beads. And again, you go through the top, or the top center bead of your previous circle, and then again the 2 side beads that you connected with, and that adds on your new circle. Then you go through the next 2 side beads to connect, and you just continue adding in the same order for each circle. And you go through the top. Oh, I know what I forgot too. I wanted to show you. It's the same coming up. Just you'll add, coming up, you'll add the center bead and then the 2 side beads. And you'll continue to add that. And it's the same coming down or going up. And on either side, you always add the center bead and then the 2 side beads. And you keep doing that until you come to the last circle. Of your row. Now for the last circle, you have to consider your previous row before adding it. Now for this one, the previous row is longer, and here is 2 different ways it can look. You can have this row is the one we're working on, and here is the previous row. It is longer, and of course your next row can be either shorter or longer. So the one you're working on and the previous row is what you want to look at. And the same if you're going the other direction. This is the one you're working on, and then your previous row. Is it longer? This one we are showing if it is longer than the row you are currently working on. Now if it's longer than the row you are currently working on, you'll add your beads the same way as you've done so far. You'll go through your 2 side connecting beads, and then if you're at the top, you'll add them 1, 2, 3, and if you're at the bottom, 1, 2, 3. And it's the same here, top and bottom. And if you're going the other way, it'll be the same. You want your center bead and then your side beads, center bead, side beads. And this is if you're at the top or the bottom. So these ones you add in the same way as you have added all the other bead circles. And this is if your previous row is longer than the row you are currently working on. And then you'll go through the top bead of your previous circle, and then your 2 side beads, And then what you want to do is you want to go through your top center bead so that your string is now coming out in the direction of your next row. Now, if your previous row is shorter than the row you are currently working on, here I have it, this is the row we're working on, and the previous row is shorter. Same here, current row, previous row. Over here, current row, previous, current row, previous. So you can see it is shorter. So when that happens, you only have one side bead left when you get to it. So you just go through the one side bead instead of two, just go through the one. And you will add a side bead and then your center bead and your other two side beads for the other side. So that's for the top. For the bottom, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. And the same over here. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the top, for the bottom, and same here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And for your top, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we will add the side bead here, then the top center bead, which we'll use a green for that, and then the two side beads on the other side. There we are. Then we go through that top center bead of our previous circle, and we go through the two side beads of this new circle, which is the one that's part of your previous and the new side bead you just added. And then you go through the top of the top bead of the circle you just finished. So either way, your string will be coming out towards the new row through the top bead of the last circle you added. Now, once you have completely finished your row, you need to consider the next row, which is it longer? In this case, longer. When it is longer, what you want to do is you want to just go through that first side bead right here. Just the first side bead. So you take your string and you'll go down through that first side bead connecting to your new row, and you'll add the bottom center bead, and then you'll work your way around adding your first circle. If you're at the bottom of the pattern, you'll add the second center bead. So you'll start with the second center bead and you'll work your way around. Second center bead and work your way around. And for the other side, second center bead and work your way around. And for the bottom, same. So for the top and for the bottom. So we'll add the center bead first, which we will use a yellow. Then we'll add two side beads, which we will use pink. Then we have the top center bead, which I'm going to use a green. And as I'm doing an outline for this one, this side bead, I'm also going to do a green. And then you want to come back to the bead that your string is coming out of, and you want to go through it so that your string is coming out the same side. And there you have added the first circle for your new row. And just to get you started, you will go through your two side connecting bead, and then you'll start adding your row. So that is if you have finished a row and your next row is longer than the row you just finished. Now you've finished a row here. Your string is coming out that top center bead, and your next row, as you can see, is shorter because this is the row you finished and your next row is shorter. Row you finished, next row is shorter. Here on this side, row you finished, row is shorter. Row you finished, row is shorter. So you want to go through 1, 2, 3, that second side bead of your new circle. So you want to go down 3 side beads. So you'll go through the first 2 side beads, and then 1 side bead on your next circle, and that positions you to add for a row when it is shorter. And then you'll start at the second center bead. Same here, second center bead. And if you're going the other direction, same thing, second center bead. Same at the bottom. So let's add that. We want a center bead, and then 2 side beads, and then we want a top center bead, and then we come to we want our circle is on the second and third, so we want to go to that second side bead, thread towards the third one, and then go through the third side bead. And there you've added if your next row is shorter than the row you just finished. And then I'll do the same as before, and I'll connect for the next circle you'll be adding. And there is if your new row is shorter than the row you just finished. Now sometimes on my round patterns, the next row will be much shorter than the row you just finished. So here we're coming out the top bead of the row we just finished, and we want to count down to that second bead of our new circle. So you want to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to go down through 5 center beads, and depending on how far down it is, you just count until you get to the right spot. I see I forgot to darken the end of this string, so I will give it a little color here so that you can see it a little better. So for this one, we want to go down through 5 side beads. So we'll go through the first 2 here, then the next 2, and you can do one at a time if you want. I'm doing 2 at a time. And now we've gone through 4, so now we're going to go through just 1. So we want to be on the 5th side bead. So count 1, 2, 3, 4. We're coming out the 5th side bead here. And then we will add from the 2nd center. And if you're coming up, same thing. Oh, this one's much longer, so I did do it for longer. So that one is 5, and if we were doing this one, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So like I said, you just keep counting down till you get to that 2nd bead, and you would add the same way. And if you're on the other side, you would add, starting with the 2nd center bead, whether you're coming down from the top or up from the bottom of your pattern. So coming down, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Coming up, you'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then once you're in position, you'll add your beads. So we have a center bead, 2 side beads, and then we have the last center bead. And then you want to remember 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you want to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, that 4th bead going towards the 5th bead, and then go through the 5th bead also, and that adds a much shorter row. Then you also can go through the next 2 to prepare for adding your next set of beads, and that is what you do if your next row is a lot shorter than the row you just finished. And then at this point, I'm going to show you how to secure your string. So we set this aside. Now, for the beginning string, you can secure that anytime you feel your piece is far enough along that you have stuff to work with. With my monofilament and tape, it just slides right off. And then you take your piece, and what I do is I weave back and forth like a figure 8, but I go 3 circles. So I go up 2 side beads. Then I cross the center bead. Then I go up the 2 side beads on the other side. And I cross the center bead. And then I go up 2 side beads and cross the center. Then I flip my piece over and I head back the way I came, going through the 2 side beads and the center, and the 2 sides, center, and 2 sides. And then we can go out the center here and we clip off the excess. Now this works for most bead types. However, if you happen to have a bead type that has very large holes, then you may need to either thread further back or turn and do a couple different rows when you secure your strings. You'll need more string to secure your string. Or you may already know a nifty way to tie off when you're working with the 1 needle stitch or a 1 needle stitch. This is how I do it, as I don't use the 1 needle stitch very often. Now, for if you finish a row and it's too short, you can go into the previous row to secure your string. So I've already gone through a couple side beads here, so I'm going to go through one more, get me into position to go through a center bead, and then I'll go through a center bead, and I'll do the same thing. I'll use 3 circles and do it like a figure 8, back and forth, weaving back and forth. And then once you've gone 3 circles, you turn your piece and you head back the direction you came from. And then once you've gotten back to where you started, you can clip off the excess. And that is a good way to secure your string for the 1 needle stitch. Now this one I wanted to show you because for my cross patterns, when you add the arms, you don't start right at the top of, or you have to start down a little ways. So for this section, I'm going to show you how to add a new string. So for this one, as you can see, we stopped in the middle of a row. So what you want to do if you're going to add a new string when you stopped in the middle of the row is you want to see where your center bead is, and then you want to go up 2 side beads, 1, 2, and you want to go in towards your center bead. So you want to thread into that second side bead towards where your center bead is. Then you want to take about 6 inches and you want to weave your string to secure it. Now normally when you secure your previous, you will go down this way. So what I do when I have a new string is I go the opposite direction. That way you don't clutter up the inside of your beads too much, because the holes are so small that would become a problem for you. So I go in through the second bead, then I cross over the center and I head up the row away from where I ended, and I weave through 3 circles. So that's 1 center bead, go through the side, a second center bead, go through the side, and then a 3rd center bead. And now I turn and I go back the way I came, making sure to weave back and forth, going through your center beads. And this works for most bead types. If you have beads with very large holes, you may need to find another way to secure your string. And there you are ready. You can clip off the excess of your secured string, and you are ready in that second side bead to add your row. Now you can do the same thing for when you're starting a row. You just go 1, 2, 3 for if it's shorter. So you would go through the 3rd side bead towards the end of your row, or if your next one is longer, you would just go through that 1st side bead and you would secure your string. What I'm going to show you now is if you're adding a much shorter row, or for like the crosses, you're adding an arm. what you want to do is you want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to that second bead of the first circle you're going to be adding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you will go towards the end you counted from, just like with the other, and you'll secure your string, and then you'll be in position to begin adding your new row. So like I said, you just count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to whatever position you need to be in, and then you will secure your string. So we go through center, and like I said, you want to go 3 center beads from where you begin. So you go through your side beads, and this is 1 center bead. And your side. Now for my cross patterns, I have the position counted out for you, so you won't have to count for those. It's just like on the round doilies. If it's smaller, you will need, I don't put a number for those because it's not very far you have to go. Where with the cross patterns, it can be like 16 down. So I do put the numbers for that. And then once you've gone 3 center beads, you turn and you head back the way you came. And this is how I secure and add on new string, is I just thread back through 3 circles, weaving back and forth, and that holds the string for most bead types. As I've mentioned previously, if you have beads with very large holes, you may need to use a different method to secure your string or add new string. And there we're in position to begin a much shorter row. And that is all I have. I hope I covered everything, as the one needle stitch is not my primary stitch, and therefore I don't use it very often. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to email me and I'll be glad to help you with your piece. You can also find practice patterns at my Pinterest account, and I do have them at my Yahoo group. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it is very helpful for you. Happy beading!